Welcome to Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston, PhD. Glenn has held his doctorate in psychology for more than 30 years and is also a former multi-million-dollar consultant to the big food industry and uses his experience to help you defeat your cravings. This show will help you to focus on dramatically reducing cravings and leave the diet mentality behind, so you can more easily and effortlessly achieve your health, fitness, and body composition goals. Please remember, no doctor-patient relationship is created via this show, and you are responsible for confirming any changes to your diet, health, or psychological routines with an appropriately licensed professional before implementing them. Now, before we get started, if you haven't yet downloaded the free smartphone app to access dozens of these recordings all in one place, as well as to avail yourself of a confidential community for support, motivation, and assistance, please visit the podcast link on defeatyourcravings.com as soon as possible. And now, here's your host, Dr. Glenn Livingston.
Hey, it's the very good Dr. Glenn Livingston with defeatyourcravings.com. I'm here with a kind-hearted woman named Diane, who's agreed to share her experience and strength and hope and wisdom, as well as her trials and tribulations and stumbles and falls, so that you can benefit from her experience as well. Right, Diane?
Correct. I have to say this cracks me up. When Amy asked me to do this, the only reason I did it was because the program has been so helpful for me.
Well, I appreciate that. So why does that crack you up then, if the program's been really helpful?
Well, I still feel like I'm that toddler taking steps.
I see. It's still kind of new to you.
It is very new to me.
Yeah, that's normal. And our food monsters would want to use that newness to say this can't possibly last, right? Remember, the food monster always operates on the principle of destabilization or uncertainty. And so it's looking for any reason possible to say this is just a fluke. And so I tell people we want to try to cultivate confidence rather than let the food monster do that. And if Amy thought that your success was worth documenting, then there's probably a reason for that. I'm open to being proven wrong if you really want to tell me otherwise, but I'm betting there's a reason that she chose you.
Okay. Before we go any further, I want to thank you for assigning Amy. I was so afraid I was going to get a 19-year-old woman who never had more than 5 pounds to lose.
Oh, it's interesting. I found that the people who make the best coaches are the people who feel like the book and the method save their own life. I used to hire psychologists that had a little bandwidth, but unless they kind of been through it themselves and understand the pain, they weren't able to do it. They just got too involved with some psychological theories. And all of my coaches are very experienced in having solved the problem themselves, and they know what it's like to feel addicted to food. And actually, at the moment, most of my coaches I think all of my coaches are over 50. That's not a requirement. I would hire a younger person, but it's just kind of the way that it worked out. So I'm glad you jive with Amy. That's wonderful.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about your story. What was it like before you came to us, and then what happened?
I have had about 43 years of yo-yo dieting. Up until that point, I was never overweight, even being pregnant, and I have 3 sons. I never really had a problem with my weight. In fact, as a child, I was underweight. Then some life circumstances led me to a point where I started overeating, and I blamed everyone but myself, put the responsibility on everyone else, and went from a weight that now I would love to be at to over 200 pounds. I went up to about 225 pounds, I think, at my top weight. And I just lost hope. The only reason I tried this one more time, I'm 77 now, is because you had gone through it yourself. And I thought, maybe there is hope. Maybe this is it. I don't want to die fat. That was a big deal for me. I'm starting to feel my mortality, and I just didn't want to die a fat woman. And I wanted the rest of my family to be proud of me. And I wanted to say, okay, before I die, I'm going to be able to work pretty close again. I'm going to be as healthy as I can for as long as possible. I was so surprised when this program worked. for me,
Why?
because everything else has been one of these scraping your nails on a chalkboard type thing to stay on the program. I've done everything from cabbage soup to whatever, but it was always work for a short time. And then once I fell off whichever wagon I was on, I just couldn't get back onto it. Now, this one, I've had a few missteps, but I was able to get back on. And when I did, it was like, I'm really glad that happened because it proved to me that this is something that's going to stay with me, that this is something that I'm going to be able to work with, that this is not just a one-shot thing that's going to work for a few months. And I've lost more than 50 pounds, I think at least 4 times in my lifetime, and a lot of other little amounts. At one time, I put 50 pounds back on within 2 months. So I've been around the block a few times, and this program, having Amy there to talk to, having your podcasts to listen to. In fact, when I first joined, everything was coming at me in so many directions. I thought, this is too much. This is too much for me to absorb. I don't know what to open up or what to do next. And I had to keep looking at things. And then I finally settled into a rhythm and understood, okay, if I need to listen to somebody else's story, this is where I go. The more I involved myself with the program, the easier it was for me. And I know now that when I am letting myself skip a day or let myself not really pay attention to my program, it's so much easier to say, well, this bite of my husband's piece of cake is not really against my program because that's not really a second helping. And it's easier to let the pig talk you into something.
I remember a guy who told me that for some reason, in the early days, not in the later days, once everything's kind of solidified inside of you, but in the early days, he told me that he had a rule that he wasn't allowed to have cake, and his pig actually told him the cake was like fish. Cake is kind of like fish. And then he proceeded to explain why the pig thought cake was like fish. I forget exactly what it was. Diane, why do you think that you were able to get back on track with this program when you fell down and you had difficulty before? Oh, I want to say one more thing before you answer that. There is a lot to the program. See, overeating turns out to be a pernicious habit. There's not one secret. There are about a dozen of them that kind of all have to come together to overcome it. It's a survival habit. It gets very deeply entrenched in people, but these are not like incredibly hard mountains to climb. They're not incredibly hard things to learn, but there are a dozen of them or so that you need to put together to overcome overeating. That's what your coach is for, is to figure out which one comes first and how to slow it down and make it simple and, hold your hand and guide you through it. But they all have to be there so that people can get to the one that they need. Anyway, why do you think that this program helps you to get back on track when you made a mistake, whereas others had not?
I think it's because the rules are very clear. And I think that it's also because there is so much information out there. If one thing doesn't work for you, something else may. But the rules are very clear. And I kind of laugh because my first rule, my pig slop, was a bag of microwavable popcorn with, of course, movie butter on it. And I would melt another half cube of butter and pour it over that, and then add a couple handfuls of M&Ms. And I always ate in my bedroom. That was my place to go unless I had company. And by company, I mean my sons or family or whatever. I ate every meal in my bedroom. And it was a place I could go to be by myself and pig out, no matter if I was on a diet or if I was just eating trash. So I did make that my rule that every meal has to be eaten at a table, not in front of the TV, not with a book, not in front of the computer, not distracted in any way. And that's what I told people. That was my rule. I didn't tell them about the popcorn for a long time, but I don't know why. But that's my only food rule aside from no seconds helpings.
Hmm. So you eat at a table and you don't go back for seconds.
I don't. It's just something that if I want to read, which I love to do, I have to finish my meal. I have to get up from that table and go somewhere else. And that was the hardest rule to make because I knew that when I make a rule, I have to stick to it. And part of the thing is that I have to be accountable for that because I can't say that it's someone else's fault that I'm overeating. This was something that I learned early on was that I am the one that's responsible for my own decisions. And I like to do really short meditations at night. And one of them was at any given moment, you have the power to say, this is not how the story is going to end.
Tell me more about that. How did you come up with that and what does that do for you?
That I'm the only one that's writing this story. I'm the one that's writing my end of life book. And then I got to the point I'm thinking, well, I'm not at the end of my life yet, unless somebody's got some other plans for me today. So this program has extended my view as far as what I can do. I'm no longer living in a big slop of self-pity. My life is not exactly an easy one now. I am my husband's caregiver. He has dementia. Some days are not so good and some days are pretty good. But I was all wrapped up in his illness and still trying to do something with my group, Kiwanis, which is a group that works with children in our community. I was really struggling to say, why am I still alive? Aside from my husband needing a caregiver, why am I still here? And this program has done so much for me because it's not just the weight loss. It's given me a whole new outlook on my life. And it's also allowed me to forgive my husband for having dementia. That was a big deal for me. I was
Mm.
angry. I was very angry. And why do I have to do this? I never wanted to be a nurse. If you asked me ever, would you want to be a nurse? My answer would be, you got to be kidding me. I'm just not that type of person. It's not something I can just walk away from.
So how did finding more peace with food make it possible for you to forgive your husband?
I realized it's not his fault.
I
Number
see.
one, the responsibility for my food lies directly in front of me. I do the cooking. I am the one that sits down and eats how much she should eat. He does not sit me in a chair and say, open your mouth, I'm going to shovel food into it. It just is taking the responsibility for myself.
Makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Diane, is there anything else that I should be asking you that I didn't ask you? Anything else you wanted to be sure we covered or a refutation that helped you in the program or some other aspect of the program that was
Well, I can
helpful?
tell you one of the things. Amy is such a nag. She says, have you written that down, Diane? I go, no, no, no. I know I haven't written it down. I know what you're going to say. I do not take the time, most of the time, unless it's in your homework or in Amy's homework, to write down my refutations. I do not take the time to confront my pig that way. And my pig is very smart. I had this binge. My first binge was with pretzels and hummus. I had to go to the store. We didn't really have anything else but pretzels and hummus in the house. And I was at the computer writing out my list. And I thought, well, I'll just grab this because I can't go to the store hungry. And pretty soon I'm taking on this binge of, I'm halfway through the container of hummus and the bag of pretzels. And I thought to myself, I said, so here it is. This is the end. This is how it's going to be. I told you it wasn't going to work. You spent all this money on this program, and now you're just going to be disappointed, just like all the other times. And I was crushed. And I was able to push myself away from the computer and the food. And I walked out onto my front porch and sat. And we have a hummingbird feeder there. And I took a few deep breaths and I felt my pulse and my heart going back to where it was supposed to be. And then I kind of sat and thought, okay, so I'm over that. I survived that. And then this coyote, we have coyotes sometimes in our neighborhood because we live near Griffith Park and they come in at night. And this coyote came and plopped itself on my front lawn about 6 feet from my feet.
Wow.
I said, what, did you come to play with my pig?
That's
But
funny.
it just kind of brought me back to the present and the fact that, okay, this is over with, and now you can get up and you can go back again.
It strikes me that that was a reminder that you were dealing with a primitive part of yourself. The coyote came to see your pig, and you said,
Yeah,
wait a minute, that's not me. That's this primitive.
right.
Yeah.
I had another problem this last week. I got into diet mentality again, which is how I always behaved before. But I started eliminating all fats from my diet, everything. It was, I would sit down, okay, I'm eating this. It's good food, but there's no fat in it. That's fine because that scale is going to go down. I'm stuck on this one weight. It's not moving, and I'm damned if I'm not going to get that down. So I got into trouble. You can't not eat any fat for a week and still have your system working properly. I thought to myself, this is really a smart pig because now I don't know what to eat. I don't know whether to go out and binge. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And then I went back to your latest,
The module.
thank you, and to read that if you have a problem, don't go off one way or the other, but stay with it for a few days. So I know that I have to go back. I have a good cookbook on Mediterranean eating and go through that and find the recipes again that have healthy fats in them and incorporate those into my diet. And I am saying this now, and it's killing me to say this. If it takes me 2 years to lose my weight, that's what it's going to take. It's just not going to happen as fast as I wanted it to.
Direction is a lot more important than speed, though. Every month you'll be a little thinner, a little more confident.
I'm on a path that I've never been on before because this path is not only about my food, it's about my attitude and it's about the way I look at life.
Beautiful. Dan, I'm going to run out of time in a minute or two. I just wanted to say two things before we stop. One was that, and I think you're kind of getting this with Amy because she is relentless about these kind of things.
I know what you're going to say.
What am I going to
As
say?
soon as you hang up, write your refutation.
Well, the reason it's better in writing is that there are limitations of short-term memory that the pig can take advantage of. And when you write down the squeal is the illogical justification for breaking your rules for everybody who doesn't know that. When you write that down, you'll more likely be able to see how this is your primitive brain and not really you and your higher goals. And you'll see elements of your pig's pernicious logic that are leading you astray. And you'll be able to refute them in written form. And then you'll have it for the next time. Then you'll have it right there the next time that squeal comes up. And the pig says that cake is like fish, whatever it says, or this isn't really a second portion, whatever it happens to say, you'll have the answer right there. And it's very, very difficult to try to keep it all in your head. Yeah, that's why. Is there anything else you wanted to ask me or tell people before we begin to wind down?
There was something that I read last night, and I'd like to share it with you because I think it's really helpful. And I don't know who wrote this. I read it and I kind of moved it around. And it says, when I heal myself, the small world around me heals. And in that quiet restoration, the world itself mends.
We can make a difference in the smallest corner of the world.
That's right.
And the smallest effort can make the biggest difference like that. So,
in our own world. And I think once you make a difference in your own world, you're just on the way to healing.
And to bring it full circle, Jean-Paul Sartre said, that we can remake ourselves at any moment. He said that in a variety of different ways, but it's very convincing. We can remake ourselves at any moment. And you said, this is not how the story will end. I can write this story.
Yes.
So, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of today's broadcast of Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston. Now, if you'd like to find out more about the products and services Dr. Glenn offers to help you dramatically reduce your cravings and stop overeating in 90 days or less, please visit defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. That's defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. Thanks.